I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It's Monday and we are continuing to dive through our team previews. We are moving to the AFC East, so maybe a little bit of more exciting teams than the NFC South was last week. But you know what? It's also a week where we have an actual NFL game, which takes place on Thursday, the Hall of Fame game. Matt, I'll start with you. How excited are you?
You know, I guess as excited as I can be. We don't really get to see a lot of great football typically in the Hall of Fame game. It's so early in the preseason, but it's just the real signifier that football is back. Right after this, I think it's only a week, and then we get full weeks of preseason games.
Yep.
College football is right around the corner. I mean, it's almost... It feels like 5 minutes ago we were just talking about the Chiefs winning another Super Bowl, and now here we are ready for the season to kick back off again.
I mean, who's not ready to watch Hassan Hall and John Kelly, you know, Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Kellen Mond? They're just going to light it up. Mike Harley Jr., Dalen Baldwin, Rashawn Henry. I mean, that's DFS gold there. So, you know, I agree with you, man. It signifies the start of the season. We're what? 12 days out from the Fantasy Football Expo. So that's kicking off. These things are all of these things are starting to come together. And I'm going, oh my God, I got to finish my redraft rankings because we'll be talking about those in, a couple weeks. I don't know how many more team recaps we got to do.
We have 4 more episodes, 8 more teams.
Nice. So this week and next week, then it's rankings, and we gotta, get some listeners into our redraft league. We'll talk about that here at the end of the show, and it's it's an exciting time to be alive if you're into fantasy football. Everything is starting to come together. We're, so 4 or 5 weeks of preseason, 18 weeks of the regular season. So in about 22 weeks, we'll all be dead, but it'll be worth it.
Well, with the good and the happy of football returning comes sometimes the sad news out of camp, and we've had plenty of that over the weekend. Jonathan Taylor had a meeting with his owner. Did not seem to go well. Has formally requested a trade. At the same time, a guy who profiled as one of his primary backups, Zach Moss, broke his arm. And is out for quite some time. So, Dennis, I'll start with you. Concerned about the Colts backfield and Jonathan Taylor?
Fundamentally, no. It's a harsh reality for a running back, no matter how good you are. And probably what makes matters worse for Taylor is that he did get injured last year for the first time in his football career. So, Jim Irsay is a pompous ass. We've seen that over and over again. And I think it'll be interesting to see if they try to put him on the NFI list because he's saying he didn't tell him he had a back injury. So that, the union would get involved with that, I'm sure. And there would be a big old fight there to kind of keep him off of that list so that his contract tolls and all that fun stuff. In the end, I think he'll be back in camp. I'm not concerned about Zach Moss because I like Deion Jackson better anyways. He's much more athletic. I think Zach Moss is a slower version of Latavius Murray. He's just a grinder. He's, yes, he'll be okay if you get him volume, but if you get Deion Jackson, whoever the hell his name is, Deion Jackson, the same volume, I think he'll produce much better. He's more explosive. He's a better pass catcher. So Jackson is the guy that I like there. I heard some people today talking a little bit about Evan Hull. And while fast in a straight line, I think Hull is more of a, third string, fourth string special teamer. Maybe he breaks out and does something, but in the end, I think it's going to be Jonathan Taylor, week one, lining up in the backfield behind Anthony Richardson, and everything will be back to normal.
Yeah, I mean, when I read Jim Irsay's comments, it just made me think. Tell me how you lucked into an NFL franchise because of your dad, without telling me you lucked into an NFL franchise because of your dad. It was, in my opinion, embarrassing, but I guess that's not really that surprising. He's probably one of the more embarrassing owners in the entire NFL with everything he's done off the field as well. I really don't know what to think of the Jonathan Taylor situation. It's a weird place for running backs to be. It's the only position that you have to produce on the field to get your second contract, but then they hold against you the fact of what you've produced on the field because of the workload you've put on yourself. No other position is held to those standards. And maybe it's an unfair thing to say, but I'm sure a lot of it comes from the fact that it feels like oftentimes running backs have almost kind of become replaceable in some NFL offenses. I mean, again, Deion Jackson is not Jonathan Taylor. He's not. But Deion Jackson was successful in the Colts offense when Jonathan Taylor was out last year. And so maybe that's what they're looking at. I really don't know if Taylor will start week one. I hope he does, just from an NFL and fantasy perspective. In my opinion, he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. You want to watch those players play on Sunday. So I do hope that they do get this figured out. Or if he gets traded, whatever. I really hope that we do get a chance to see him. He's not, put in a horrible position of, well, we're just going to put you on this list and you better make it back in time, or guess what? Your contract rolls over to next year. It's an ugly situation. I'm sure, if I'm being fair, Jim Irsay probably isn't all to fault. Who knows what was said in this meeting? I'm sure Taylor has some blame, if any, really, but it's just not, in my opinion, a good look for the NFL in general, for an owner to be out here saying these things. And in my opinion, one of the better players in your league as well to be doing this.
Well, speaking of running backs in Seattle, we have a pair of running backs who are ailing. Ken Walker has a groin strain, and they're not sure when he'll be back. And Zach Charbonnet has an ailing shoulder. Matt, cause for concern?
Maybe more for Walker. I'm not super concerned about a shoulder injury for Zach Charbonnet. We've seen running backs have had shoulder injuries before. They're able to kind of, whether it's tape it up or put extra padding under there to help protect it, and they end up fine. A groin injury is scary. I mean, that's one of those things where you could take the time that you need, slowly build yourself back up, think you're fine, and then all it takes is one wrong step or maybe a juke move, and you've done something to it again, and now you're out for more time. It's honestly even more concerning the fact that we already saw Kenneth Walker dealing with soft tissue injuries last year as well. I'd be more worried personally about him again, just because it's a groin, than necessarily Zach Charbonnet. I think one of them will be fine. It's still early. It's not even August 1st yet. I know we're getting close to the point where it's a month out. If we're heading into week 3 of the preseason and neither one of these guys have practiced, then I'm definitely hitting the panic button. Right now, I'm probably more worried about Walker than I am Charbonnet.
Yeah, I'm not going to worry until they start to bring in Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt, Zeke Elliott for a visit. Until then, I think it's just being cautious. You've got a couple guys, like you said, with Walker, it's a groin. He's had a soft tissue injury before. Until they start bringing in running backs and taking a look at him. You know, Cook apparently left New York without a contract. If I wake up tomorrow and I hear he's landing in Seattle, then I'm going to get concerned. But until then, I'm just going to chalk it up to them being cautious. You know, what I do think is that they don't want to be caught in the position they were last year. That's what part of the reason they drafted Charbonnet was to improve the quality of running backs in that room. And it makes sense if they want to try and run it. It feels like, though, drafting Jackson Smith and Jigba, adding to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, I think they'll be okay if they have to be a little bit more pass heavy as well, and just use the running backs to balance things out. But like I said, until they start bringing RBs in for a visit, I'm not going to sweat it. I'm going to buy the dip.
Yeah, they still have time. I mean, it is technically still July today. Sticking on injury news, but moving away from running back, Denver, not a great day today. Tim Patrick, who was trying to work himself back from a torn ACL suffered last preseason, appears to have ruptured his Achilles. And at the same time, KJ Hamler now has a heart condition and will be stepping away from football for a while. So, Dennis, what do you make of these blows to the Denver receiving corps? And
I'm gutted for Tim Patrick. You know, he was flashing. He's a lunch pail guy. Came in as an unheralded guy, put in his time. He's kind of like Adam Thielen in that regard. He came in and just did whatever needed to be done to make the team and just steadily worked his way up. And it looked like going into last year, he was ready. I mean, they gave him a decent extension. They like him. They were ready to use him. And then he tore the ACL. Now the Achilles this year at I think he's 29 years old.
Yeah, he is 29.
It feels like this is probably it for him. You know, he may try to bounce around a little bit once he gets healthy again. But ultimately, I think he ends up, his days of being able to be fantasy relevant are behind him. Hamler, it's a, weird one. We hadn't heard much about it until all of a sudden. And they say they want to re-sign him, but why? If that's the case, why wouldn't you put him on some injured list so you can help him get the medical treatment that he needs? That's weird to me. It's well, you want this guy to come back to your team, but you're telling him you got to foot the bill for your own health issue, though. I don't know. That seems a little weird to me.
Yeah, I hate to say it this way. I don't really care about Hamler. He's done nothing. I mean, NFL-wise, I don't know what he would have been. I'm more gutted for Tim Patrick than anything else. I mean, again, you go back 2 years ago, he was arguably the best wide receiver on that team. Looked like he ends up getting paid. Obviously, that was great for him. Looked like he was going to have a chance to take another step forward last year, gets the ACL injury. And then if it is an Achilles at his age, we just don't really see not even just wide receivers, any player come back from that at that age. I mean, Donta Foreman took 3 years and he was 21, I think, when it happened to him. I think the last player that I can remember coming back and being successful, and it was literally the year after, was Emmanuel Sanders. Some, kismet there with the fact that he was a Denver Bronco, but I think his better came when he went to, was it Buffalo that he went to after that and ended up having a really good year?
He went to San Francisco and then New Orleans.
So I would obviously love for it to happen. I am a big fan of Tim Patrick. I still was drafting him in a lot of dynasty leagues. I took him. Matter of fact, in a big one I'm in with a lot of really well known people in the industry, I paid $10 to get him in an auction at the end of the draft. I thought he was going to be a sneaky wide receiver gift for me, and then obviously just the Achilles. It's just I do hope he can come back, but I lean more with Dennis. There's probably a chance that now he's unfortunately going to end up bouncing around because it's an Achilles injury at such a late stage in your career.
Yeah, I was really bummed about Tim Patrick, too. You guys know that I like him a lot. I think he has had the most heart of any receiver for the Broncos. Hamler, I actually thought he was squarely on the roster bubble anyway, and I think that answers your question for why they are releasing him. But I believe when you get released with a medical designation, they still have to pay out.
Well, that's good then.
Yeah. But I wasn't sold he was going to make the team anyway. I think they've been making moves to try to get other people because we just haven't seen anything, and he hasn't been healthy and available. So hopefully he gets that heart issue taken care of.
It's Kendall Hinton time.
Among others, I mean, they have Marquez Callaway. They drafted Marvin Mims. And they moved up to draft Marvin Mims. So
it seems like Mims is going to be the guy to benefit.
Yeah. I agree. It's the Marvin Mims buy window has closed.
In the last piece of news, Matt, Ronald Jones suspended for a couple of games. First off, do you remember which team he's now on? And
Dallas
second,
Cowboys.
Doesn't matter.
It does not matter, but he is with the Dallas Cowboys. If you roster Tony Pollard, you're going to be really happy for probably the first 2 weeks. I don't think Jones was going to be that big of a hit to Pollard anyway. He's, as someone who loved Ronald Jones coming out, I'm almost positive I had him at no worse than RB5 in the class. I was a big fan of his coming out at USC. Really thought he had a chance to be something good. Dave just doesn't. I mean, you could. The dude's vision is. I was going to make a really bad joke there. I'll just say it's really bad. I mean, you could open up the Grand Canyon hole for him, and he's still going to cut right and miss it and run into the defense. Great speed though, and bricks for hands. But outside of that, he's really fast. But I don't think it matters personally.
I haven't had a chance to look, but it seems like that Jones is being suspended 2 games for the same drug infraction that DeAndre Hopkins was suspended 6 games for. So, I mean, is that the league's way of saying, look, we know Jones really wasn't going to play anyways, so, why bother? It feels like they're all in on Malik Davis and Rico Dowdell as the backups. It's not too late for them to bring Zeke back. There's still a couple guys out there. But man, it feels like for fantasy this year, Tony Pollard is good to go.
Yep. Well, we are moving on to our next set of teams, which we are in the AFC East, top half of the AFC East. So that begins with the Buffalo Bills. In 2022, they finished 3-13, first in the East, lost in the divisional round to the Bengals. Key additions, they picked up Kyle Allen, a new backup quarterback. They picked up Damian Harris and Darrionton Evans at running back. They picked up Trent Sherfield at wide receiver, Leonard Floyd at linebacker, and Taylor Rapp at safety. Key losses, Devin Singletary, their running back, went to the Texans. Isaiah McKenzie, the wide receiver, went to the Colts. Tremaine Edmonds, the linebacker, went to the Bears. In the draft, they snagged Dalton Kincaid at tight end and Osiris Torrance at guard, among others. Key fantasy assets, Josh Allen was QB2 last year. James Cook, as a rookie, was running back 44. Damian Harris was running back 48 for the Patriots. And Latavius Murray was running back 32 for the Broncos. Stephon Diggs was wide receiver 4 last year. Gabe Davis, in his huge monumental breakout season, finished as wide receiver 36. At tight end, Dawson Knox was tight end 14, and then they have now added the rookie Kincaid. So, Dennis, I'll start with you. What's your fantasy expectation for the Bills, and what do you make of the RB and receiving course?
Yeah, I think they may still be holding out hope that Dalvin Cook will come there. But if not, they're talking about James Cook as a 3-down back. And, I suppose 4th down is a down as well. Maybe he's returning kicks. I don't think James Cook has what it takes to hold up as a 3-down back. Now, I like Damian Harris. And they have the aforementioned Latavius Murray. So their running back room, while not having a marquee guy, could be in a lot worse shape. So let's see, which stat am I highlighting here? So, Latavius Murray was 14th last year with with 170 or 150 carries. He was 14th in explosive runs over 30 yards. I don't get it because you don't associate that with Latavius Murray now. Coming out of college, he was very fast, runs great in a straight line. He doesn't have much wiggle. So apparently at his advancing age, he still has a little bit of that left. So he'll provide depth for them. I think Damian Harris will be the early down back. James Cook will be the guy. He'll get the third downs. He'll get early down work as well, depending on what they're doing. But it's a passing team. They threw the ball over 600 times. I think 631 times last year. 651 times Josh Allen threw the ball last year. So it's built on Diggs.
Actually,
David,
Allen, I show Allen 567 attempts and 574 total.
Oh, that's dropbacks. My bad. 567. You are correct. Looking at the wrong column. So at 567 attempts, that was, let me see. It was still ninth in the league, so it's a pretty high volume. I don't think it changes their offense a whole heck of a lot. They added Dalton Kincaid. Dawson Knox is still going to be used as their primary tight end. They got a couple guys that are battling for the wide receiver 3 spot. I'm into Gabe Davis this year. Gabe Davis was number 1 in average depth of target last year for all receivers with more than 75 targets. Now, he gets down the field. He did himself a disservice last year because he went out, he injured his ankle, and then he just kept playing. So it took away a lot of his mobility. Would he have been better off if he sat for 4 weeks and let it heal? Probably. But, these guys are tough guys. It's a collision sport. They know they're going to get beat up. And so he kind of tried to play through that. Stephon Diggs, as long as he's getting the ball, he's going to keep doing what he does. He's a phenomenal wide receiver. I'm all in on, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Gabe Davis is kind of a bargain. I think Davis is going off as like wide receiver. He's like going off as a wide receiver 4 or 5. Wide receiver 48 in Dynasty Nerds, 44 in Fantasy Pros. So I think he has the potential to put up high-end RB3 to mid-level, high-end wide receiver 3 to mid wide receiver 2 numbers because this team is going to pass, and if he's healthy, he's going to be great. I'm not on Dalton Kincaid. I at his cost, I'm out on him. At tight end 13 in Fantasy Pros, there's guys I like better. I'd rather have David. If I'm not getting one of the 2 or 3 or 4 elite guys, I'm going to wait and I'm going to take guys like Evan Ingram and David Njoku and guys at the back end like that. Even Darren Waller, I think Waller's in the tight end 10 or 11 range. I'd rather have him than Dalton Kincaid. So there's going to be a lot that the Bills score a lot of points. And if I'm having to rank their fantasy assets, it's Allen, it's Diggs, it's Davis, and then the running backs scare me. I want to be it, but I don't think I'd have either one of them as anything higher than, say, an low end RB3. And I'll probably be way off on Cook because if he gets passes, he'll be. If he catches enough passes, he'll be very viable as a RB2.
Yeah, I don't think that this offense is going to change much from what it was last year. We had concerns about it going into last year, obviously with Brian Daboll leaving and going to the Giants, and Ken Dorsey did fine with it. It wasn't a Daboll offense, but I think it was fine. If you're asking, about the wide receiver core, I still think obviously Stephon Diggs is the man in this offense. I don't really trust anybody else on this wide receiver core. I mean, we saw Cole Beasley have moments in the slot. Maybe that's where Khalil Shakir is going to show up, but all the reports are he's dropping balls, and I don't want to make that the end-all be-all because for those of you who remember, Jamar Chase was dropping balls his rookie year. Last I remember, he was pretty damn good. So I don't think Khalil Shakir deserves to be in that conversation, but still, I'm not taking too much away from the drop balls thing, but I just don't know that Khalil Shakir is that talented of a player. We've also seen the reports that Dalton Kincaid will be playing in that spot. I We'll be intrigued if that happens because I am honestly with Dennis. Like, I'm just out on Dalton Kincaid. I thought it was a bad pick to begin with during the NFL draft. I don't know why you take him in the first round because to me, he is Dawson Knox. And we've not seen them really make a tight end be fantasy viable. Dawson Knox had 1 year, but that was also because of how many touchdowns he was catching. It had nothing to do, is literally just because of that high-end touchdowns that he scored. It wasn't massive volume, wasn't getting you a ton of yards. When it comes to the running back room, I think it's Damian Harris. And if I'm being honest, he's my value as well. Like, he's going off on Fantasy Pros ADP as the 43rd running back, 144th player. Like, I think people forget, and I get it, it's very much a what have you done for me lately? NFL league, fantasy football. I think people forget how good Damian Harris was when he was playing and healthy. I mean, he kept a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, who many people have as like a top 12 back now in fantasy, on the sideline. Like, he was the guy for the Patriots. If he's healthy, I think he's going to be exactly that for the Buffalo Bills. I've said before, they're slowly taking away Josh Allen's carries in the red zone. I think they're trying to obviously preserve his health long term. You don't need him to keep going in there and getting beaten and battered at the goal line when you can have a guy like Damian Harris. You know, James Cook could be an interesting play. Dennis mentioned if he gets the catches. Well, Buffalo has been one of those teams that has just not thrown to the running back a ton. It was like 30-something receptions over 2 years. That's not a lot. Like, that's even bad for college teams, and college teams don't throw the running back that much. So if you're counting on receptions for James Cook, unless Ken Dorsey puts that in the game plan and makes it a point of emphasis, I just don't see it happening because Josh Allen is going to run before he dumps off to the running back. And James Cook, at least in my opinion, is not that good of a pass blocker. So I don't know that they're going to have him out there necessarily in a lot of these third down situations. So maybe they use him just in that role, and that's where his value comes from. But if I had to pick one running back for me, it's going to be Damian Harris. And I think he's the best value on that team because Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs are going at value. And I agree with Dennis as well. And Dalton Kincaid, he's going way above his value, in my opinion.
Yeah, that was going to be my pick for value too. I think Cook may get a few more touches, but I think he may end up in largely a similar role. With Harris getting, last year Devin Singletary got 177 carries in 16 games played. I think a lot of that work will shift over to Damian Harris and where he's going so much lower. The real question too, though, is if Buffalo finally decides to actually give some running backs some goal line carries and, not suicide Josh Allen into the end zone all the time. I'm also with you there. I don't have a good feeling. Last year, I thought, I started to buy into that hype that Gabe Davis was going to take off, and maybe it was the ankle, but 93 targets, only caught 48 passes. He hasn't had a great catch rate in any of his years. I just don't know if I totally buy it. And they may have just liked that role for him. But Dennis, what value did you find in the Bills?
So since both of you guys picked Damian Harris, I'm going to let that one slide. I agree with you there. He has the potential to be like a super steal. Like, would it surprise anybody if he was a top 16 running back this year? What was it? 2 years ago, he had 202 carries, 929 yards, and 15 touchdowns. So that potential is there. But I'm going to stick with Gabe Davis. I like him a lot. I mean, in 3 seasons, he's never had less than 6 touchdowns. And while his catch rate was the lowest of his career last year, it was the second highest yards per target. His ADOT, I mean, when you're down the field further than anybody else, it's harder to catch the ball. That's just the nature of things. And if he can stay healthy, fully healthy, like he played 91% of the snaps last year, so he didn't miss a lot of time. He just played a lot of them at less than 100%. So I like Gabe Davis at that low end wide receiver 4 to substantially outperform his ADP.
Well, I guess that leads us to the big questions. They were 13-3 last year. Dennis, how do you have the Bills finishing in 2023?
I've got them taking the division again this year at 11-5. Or excuse me, 12-5. Missed that extra game.
Yeah, I have them at probably 12-5, 13-4. I think that's the range. They obviously get the Chiefs being the first team schedule. I think they could obviously lose one of those games to the Dolphins, who should be a good team. They play the Bengals, which will be a toss-up game as well. So they've got some interesting games on their schedule. I don't know that I feel that confident about saying they're going to take the division, because I like what Miami's done, but I do think they'll be one of those top two teams that either at a 12-5 or
13-4, 11-6.
No, 13-4, 12-5. I think 12-5 is probably the floor, unless Allen gets hurt.
Yeah, I think they'll compete toward a division title. I like Miami too, but 11-12 wins. I think they'll be a playoff team again. They're still the core of a good team. It just, can they take that step forward in the playoffs? And that's kind of remains to be seen. The number 2 team in the East last year was the Miami Dolphins. They finished 9-8, second in the AFC East. They lost in the wild card round, ironically, to the Bills. Key additions: they picked up Mike White as a new backup quarterback, chosen Robbie Anderson at wide receiver, Jalen Ramsey at cornerback, but he is already out until December, and Eli Apple was recently signed to be Ramsey's replacement at cornerback. Teddy Bridgewater no longer on the team. They lost wide receiver Trent Sherfield, who went to Buffalo, and tight end Mike Gesicki, who went to New England. In the draft, they picked up Devin Achane at running back and Cam Smith at cornerback, among others. Key fantasy assets: Tua Tagovailoa was quarterback 15 last year, missed a significant amount of games with concussions, but supposedly healthy and coming back. Mike White was quarterback 38 for the Jets last year. Jeff Wilson returns. He was running back 30 last year. Raheem Mostert was running back 25, and they also have Devin Achane back there. Wide receivers: Tyreek Hill came over from the Chiefs and finished as wide receiver 2 last year. Jalen Waddle was wide receiver 8. They don't have a lot of tight end. They're looking to have their leading tight end be Durham Smythe, who was tight end 53 last year. So I forgot to update the bottom, but Matt, I will start with you. What are you expecting from the Dolphins, and how confident are you in Tua?
I mean, as confident as I can be, right? I mean, there's no question about his play. Even as someone who has not been the biggest Tua fan, I had him behind Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert in his class. But I think that having a great head coach like Mike McDaniel accentuates what his skill set is. And as long as he stays healthy, Tua should be a very good quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. I do think you would be remiss if you just completely overlook the concussion issue, because that is something we can't quantify, and it's something that could happen, unfortunately, on any play. I get it. So could an ACL. So could Tommy John, blow out your elbow, Tommy John surgery. But typically you can come back from that. And the fact that, I mentioned this last year with Tom Brady, everybody was all in on him. And I said, look, when you've got your mind halfway out the door of retirement, all these NFL players tell you if you're thinking about retirement, you're already out. And Tua, while obviously not doing it because of age, but doing it because of the concussions, I do think you have to worry a little bit about that. It was clearly that serious that he was debating on retirement, but he's coming back. I think if you've got him on your dynasty teams, you can't sell him. You can't get rid of him, because nobody's going to pay the price of what he's worth, which is probably at least a top 10 at worst quarterback in the dynasty format. So I think if you've got him on your roster, you're just sticking with him and hoping, and I'm hoping too, obviously, that he stays healthy and is able to play the season, because if he does, the Miami Dolphins, I think, are going to be a very good and fun offense. I mean, you mentioned it. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, 2 of the fastest players in the NFL. Oh, then you had Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, and Devin Achane, all 3 extremely fast running backs. I mean, Devin Achane was literally an Olympic sprinter in college. This is going to be a very fun offense. Tua at the helm of it is going to benefit from that. I mean, he literally can become Steph Curry. All he has to do is dump the ball off to his playmakers and let them make plays. I think that's what this offense is going to become. I'm not necessarily out on Tyreek Hill. I worry a little bit about him because he's getting up there in age, and I kind of feel like once his legs go, that will be a concern, but that's probably still 2 or 3 years away. So, like, for me, this offense is loaded. I'll be honest, I haven't looked yet, so I won't give you who my guy is that I'm buying into or the best value of the offense. I don't know everybody's ADPs, but I think this offense is going to be, I don't want to say the best offense in the NFL, but I don't think it's going to drop out of the top 5 as long as Tua is healthy.
Yeah. I mean, the firepower that the Dolphins have with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle alone is just crazy. And oddly enough, as much as I love that, Tua was number 1 in the NFL in yards per attempt, and Josh Allen was only number 8. Tua actually had a deeper ADOT than Josh Allen, and we all it's like we're brainwashed to think, oh, they're just running short crossers and letting these 2 fast guys then outrun the defense. That's where all the yards are coming from. And that's not really the case. Yes, they do that because they can, but they also go down the field a good amount of the time. So investing in their offensive line, keeping Tua upright is certainly a big key to their offense. Now, I like Tua a lot. I liked him. He was my QB1 coming out that year. After watching Joe Burrow play now, I was wrong. But I don't know that, being QB 2 or 3, it wasn't like I was like all in on Josh Rosen or something. Tua is a pretty dang good quarterback. And if he can continue to stay healthy, he's going to be great. For me, I'm surprised when I look at the tight end group the Dolphins have, I'm surprised they didn't draft Darnell Washington because they just want a 6th offensive lineman. And he would have been a perfect fit there because he's just a big guy who can catch a pass, but he's mostly going to be a blocker. And Durham Smythe, Eric Tomlinson, or Eric Saubert, whoever it is they have there, that they have a bunch of glorified tackles that are going to be playing tight end. So the Dolphins funnel their offense very narrowly into Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And then Jeff Wilson, interesting stats here. If Jeff Wilson can stay healthy, he's going to have a phenomenal year. Last year, he was number 5 in explosive run rate among running backs with 150 carries. He was 4th in 20-yard rush percent and 6th in 30-yard rush percent. So that's rushes that go over 20 yards or rushes that go over 30 yards. He gets the rap as being the slow guy to Mostert being the fast guy, but Wilson is just an effective runner. He's a little bit like David Montgomery in the aspect that, he's probably not going to break off a 70-yarder like Mostert can do, but he's going to get you a whole bunch of 20 and 30-yard runs. I like Jeff Wilson. He's probably my sleeper on this team. If I had to go and my best value, Wilson's coming off the board right now at RB 48 in Dynasty or Fantasy Pros ADP. To me, that seems like a steal. If I can get him as my RB3, I'll take the chance that he may end up splitting time with Mostert or potentially getting injured because they don't have it until Dalvin Cook signs there. I feel like it's Jeff Wilson's job. Mostert's the backup. And I'm ready to take that 225 carry season with that efficiency that Jeff Wilson has.
Yeah, they have something really good going with Hill and Waddle. I don't know that it even necessarily matters that they don't have a lot of other targets. I'm not really expecting much from the tight end group. But the ADPs for Hill and Waddle are pretty in line, Hill going off at wide receiver 4 and Waddle going off at wide receiver 3. So I'm kind of with you, Dennis. I think Wilson going off at running back 48, one of those guys is going to hit, Dalvin Cook can't sign with every team, and right now he's just the looming threat for every backfield. But that seems like a pretty low risk investment to me. Matt, what was have you come up with what value you like the best?
Yeah, I did not realize he was going this low. I'm taking Devin Achane. I mean, coming off the board is RB 40, 126 off the board. Like, I know he's a little bit smaller, but again, I mentioned just a minute ago, he has Olympic speed. Like, Mike McDaniels is, I've talked about him before on here. I mean, I'll be honest, I did not know he was going to be this good of a head coach, but maybe had I listened to Andrew Hawkins and Joe Thomas on the Tomahawk Pod, who talked a lot about him. For those of you who don't know, he was there in Cleveland when Kyle Shanahan was there in the Johnny Manziel year. And Andrew Hawkins talked about Mike McDaniel's work ethic, and he even actually put out a tweet back then, whatever year that was, I'll just say like 2016, 2015-ish, it was a while ago, saying that one day he knew Mike McDaniels was going to be a head coach and a damn good one because of his attention to detail. And for those of you who don't know, Mike McDaniel's approach to the game is like he learns what makes every position good so that he can orchestrate an entire offense. He doesn't go and get a guy like Devin Achane for no reason. I think he's got a plan in mind for what Devin Achane's going to be. You know, I think he can very much be the receiving back for them. While he may not be a guy who gets you 250 carries a season, would not be surprised if he gets you, close to 200 touches total overall in the season. And with as beat up as that running back core can get in Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, I would not be surprised if they're not dumping off to him a ton. I know this is one of the perceived places for Dalvin Cook, but we could all then be fading Devin Achane all offseason long, and then Cook ends up going to the New York Jets, and then all of a sudden you're like, shit, why did we fade these running backs? So to me, Devin Achane is by far the best player in that room, and he's the most talented running back in that room. So for him to be going off the board at RB40 with the chance to probably bring you back RB2 value in that offense, I'm taking him as my best value.
All we know for sure about Dalvin Cook is that he's going to end up somewhere and crush somebody's dreams. Matt, the Dolphins were 9-8, playoff team last year. Probably would have finished with a little better record had Tua not missed kind of the final stretch. What do you see for them in 2023?
Well, to me, they have a pretty easy schedule. I look at this, obviously, I think that they probably lose one. I would imagine they split with the Bills. That's kind of what I figured with the Bills schedule as well, that they lose one of those. They do play the Chiefs it's an international game. I don't know exactly where it's at, but obviously that's going to be a tough game. Ravens and Cowboys are the only other.
That one's in Germany.
Germany, gotcha. Ravens and Cowboys and Chargers are the three other games, but I could see them winning one or two of those. I mean, I think the Cowboys are probably the second best team in the NFC. I think they get the Eagles too. So they've got a couple hard games on the schedule, but like outside of that, it's the Panthers. I think they could beat the Patriots twice, the Commanders, the Titans, who we've discussed recently. I think they'll be fine, but not good. I think they're going to end up, I always forget, what is it, 17? 13-4. I picked the Bills to go 12-5. I think the Dolphins are going to end up winning this division. I'm going to give them a 13-4 record.
Going 11-6. I got the Patriots getting them in what is that, week 2 in New England. I feel like Bill's going to get he's going to get the number of a couple teams in the AFC East. So I've got him getting them. I got Buffalo getting them. So I got them going 4-2 in the division, but I have them opening up with a loss to the Chargers. I got them starting actually 1-3, but then they go on a little bit of a run at the end of the season. The Eagles and Chiefs beating them, and then the Ravens getting them in week 17. But other than that, I've got them the back half of the season. I got them winning a lot of games.
Yeah, I think they're an 11-12 win team. I think it's going to be down to them and the Bills for the division title too. I like everything, how it's coming together. That being said, though, I could see a case for them being like an 8 or a 9 win team if Tua comes off and isn't able to finish, because I'm not sure I buy that Mike White is incredible. That'll do it for the first half of the AFC East. Dennis, you mentioned it a little bit off the top, but if people have some time to kill and they're looking for a way to get into our redraft league, what can they do?
Well, they can go. What we want them to go and give us a rating and a review, anyways. But if you rate and review today or in the next few days after before our next show, we'll give you a spot in the listener league. So far, we've got 6 people in, including us. It's 12-team Superflex PPR league. It's not real fancy. It's going to be on Sleeper. We'll do a live draft. Well, all at the same time, but not in person. But it won't be a slow draft. So, and we'll probably do it towards the last week of the preseason. So we'll set up a time and we'll knock it out. Go ahead, give us that rate review. Follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. It's like, so we went from Twitter to X and tweets to sheets.
There was one movie critic that I follow that had low-key the best after they changed to X. He's like, are we sure we're not on some kind of an adult film site now?
Right.
But you got to keep rolling with the punches. We'll figure out where to go. So go hop on, give us that rate and review, and you can get in. On Friday, we will look at the rest of the AFC East, which means the Patriots and the New York Jets, who I heard got some kind of a newfangled quarterback and might be on a little HBO show this summer. So we'll see how that goes for them. And actually, I think they're one of the teams that's playing on Thursday, right? Isn't it the Jets and the Browns?
Browns and Jets.
Yep, Jets, Browns, yeah.
They'll have their first game in the books. How many over under before we get out of here? How many snaps do we see Aaron Rodgers on Thursday?
0.
I think there's a chance that he goes out there, but probably 0. All right. Well, we'll see you guys on Friday. Until then, have a great week.